Spirituality 101 is basically this: there is a God, and it's not you or me. And God is God precisely because he's completely self-sufficient in himself. He doesn't need anything. He doesn't, but we do. We have needs that we must attend to if we are going to survive, much less thrive. In fact, our whole being, by its very nature, is a vast collection of neediness. Simple and complex, easily attainable, and completely out of reach. We're needy. Just think about the needs you have: physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual needs. You are needy, and so am I. God created us that way, and he passes on to us the responsibility of tending to those needs. And doing that actually outweighs every other responsibility that you have. Now, on the surface, that might sound selfish, but it's actually common sense. You can't help anybody until you've taken care of yourself. In fact, caring for yourself first is great preparation for Christian service to others. Here's what Jesus had to say about this. One time, a teacher of the law asked him, "What was the greatest commandment? What's the most important thing ever?" Without any hesitation, he said, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself." As yourself. Jesus teaches that our very ability to love others rests first and foremost on our love and care for ourselves. We often deny that we are needy. Just think about the times when you knew in your heart of hearts that you needed help. And it wasn't until the pain or the problem got so great or overwhelming that you finally took care of yourself and asked for help. When we deny even one of our legitimate needs, we aren't moving towards health. We're moving away from it. So we're taking this season of Lent to take a closer look at just how needy we are and how to best meet those needs, and as a result, how to live healthier. Last week, we began by talking about some of the temptations we face when it comes to our needs, because we do. We face temptations when it comes to our needs. The first was meeting a legitimate need in an illegitimate way. We will be tempted from time to time to do something we know is wrong in order to meet a real and honest need. For instance, you really have to pass the course, and so you cheat on the exam. The second temptation is meeting a legitimate need through a shortcut. With our needs, we're often tempted to settle for what is a shadow of our real and legitimate need. So we are challenged to take the easy way out or to go for the shortcut. We feel hungry, and that's a legitimate need. And so you grab a bag of chips. Not really helping. The third temptation is meeting a legitimate need by worshiping it. We turn our needs into virtual gods. We make them the whole of our life, giving them our attention, our finances, our affection, and our ability to pursue them at any and all costs. This could be, for example, making the whole of your life about sports. You're meeting your need by worshiping it. Today, instead of talking about all of our needs, we're going to talk about one of them. We want to talk about our greatest need, the single most important and essential need that every human being shares. And this is our need for God. Now, I know some of you might be thinking, I knew he was going to say that. He's the church guy, and this is church world. What else would he say? But maybe you're thinking, if my greatest need really is for God, then why don't I feel that need more deeply, or even perhaps at all? Why don't I wake up every morning with a deep desire to connect to God, at least half as strong as my desire for that first cup of coffee? It's true. Many of us will go for long periods of time without thinking about God at all. To maintain a habit of prayer might feel like a Herculean effort, certainly it doesn't feel like a need. There are people we all know who seem to have it all together. They're happy, they got a good job, a great family, and God is not part of the picture. So what's up with that? Where's their need? We're going to try to answer those questions by turning to one of the most well-known characters of the Old Testament in the Bible. We'll take a look at Abraham. In fact, he's counted as the patriarch or the father in faith of three of the world's major religions: Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. When we are first introduced to Abraham in the book of Genesis, we learn that he's married. He's got a wife. Her name is Sarah, and they have no children. It's a tremendously sorrowful burden for any couple who want to have a child but can't have one. But in the culture of antiquity, it was a huge problem socially and even economically. And these two, Abraham and Sarah, were advanced in age, so the situation seemed pretty hopeless. Anyway, at a certain point, God chooses to establish a relationship with Abraham. And here's how he starts that relationship. He says, "Go from your country and your family and your father's house to the land that I will show you, and I will make you a nation, and I will bless you and make you great." So if Abraham steps out in faith just a little bit, as God asks him to, then God is promising him three things. God will make him a nation, God will make him great, and God will bless him. None of which could happen if Abraham doesn't have a son. So God is promising Abraham what he really wants: a son. And Abraham takes the bait. He leaves the comfort of a very comfortable situation, and he risks it all for his heart's greatest felt need. Maybe that's you. Maybe that's your story. In fact, maybe that's why you're here at church today. You didn't come because you want a relationship with God, or because you came to worship him in spirit and in truth, or because you have this profound love for the Eucharist and you just want to spend your entire day, every day, here at church. You came because you want something. And if that's you, you're no different than Abraham. Maybe your need is different. Maybe you want a job, or kids, or a husband, or you have concerns about your health. But you came because you want something. And here's what we need to know about that. That's fine. That's perfectly okay. That's a perfectly legitimate reason to be here today. God accepts us however and whenever we're willing to come to him in all of our need. God comes to Abraham in his need, and he promises to meet that need if Abraham promises to step out in faith. And so he does. Sort of. So Abraham went as the Lord told him, and Lot went with him. Now let me tell you about this. So Abraham obeys God. He does. But he minimizes his risk by taking his nephew, whose name is Lot, just in case he really doesn't get the son that he's waiting for. Just in case. So he's got his nephew who can serve as an heir and who can help him out. In fact, we actually see this throughout the story of Abraham. He believes in God and he does what God says, kind of. He's always got a backup plan or a plan B, just in case. Abraham is our father in faith. But if you read closely, you'll see that he is far from being a perfect father. Now, I don't know about you, but I find that very encouraging. We don't have to wait to be perfect in order to follow God. We can follow him imperfectly, with all of our imperfections, and we can follow him in our neediness. It's true that Abraham's hesitation delays the promised blessings, but eventually he follows in faith, and he grows in faith, and he becomes more faithful. and he receives those blessings. He's given a son whose name is Isaac, which also brings the greatest challenge that God will give him. At a certain point, God says this, "Take your son, your only son Isaac, whom you love, and go to the land of Moriah, and offer him there as a burnt offering." We read this today. Shocking, for sure, but not as shocking as the fact that Abraham actually set out to do it. No questions asked. It just goes to show how dramatically Abraham's faith and trust in God had grown. He's willing, get this, he's willing to sacrifice his son. So Abraham and Isaac, who's probably 12 or 13 years old at this point, make their way to the place proposed for the sacrifice. And as they go, the boy asks his father, "Here is the fire and here is the wood, but where is the lamb for the burnt offering?" Abraham answered, "God himself will provide the lamb." This is another indication of faith and trust. God will provide. The story concludes. He bound Isaac and laid him on the altar on top of the wood. Then Abraham reached out his hand and took the knife to kill his son. But the angel of the Lord called and said, "Abraham, do not lay your hand on the boy or do anything to him, for now I know that you fear God." Crazy story. But with an unmistakable point. Through his very needs, God draws Abraham to a place of incredible faith and trust, so much so that Abraham today stands as the father in faith for most of the people in the world. This is why we cannot miss out on our need for God. If you're not feeling it, it's probably because you're currently busy trying to meet that need in another way. So there are times that God will allow certain things to happen to redirect that need back to him. Often it is when we are deprived of physical needs, or we are being emotionally challenged, or in a health crisis, or we're experiencing loss, or even grieving or facing death. It is in those moments that we find ourselves urgently turning toward God. Perhaps if we've been ignoring him and meeting our needs in other ways, we ourselves have delayed the blessings he wants to give us. But he still blesses us, and he always wants to, at least eventually. So here's a simple encouragement for the coming week. This is this week's challenge, and it is as simple as can be. Each and every day, just say, "God, I need you." You wake up in the morning, just say that. "God, I need you." Just say it every day for the next week. Let's practice it right now. Ready? 1, 2, 3. "God, I need you." Again. "God, I need you." Easy. Just do that every day. Just by saying that, you'll already be living in a deeper recognition of your greatest need. And no, knowing your needs and taking the time to meet them is not selfish. Not at all. It is living in the reality that you and I, we are children of God. He made us needy so that we'll eventually come to understand that our greatest need is for him.